Hello, guys, and welcome to the first edition of Taco's Fast 40 for the 2019 NASCAR season. I'll bring you a little webcast today to kind of show you what all is going on with the research station this year and what new things we'll be adding, so on and so forth. If you want to become a member of dfsarmy.com, there should be a link in the description, and if you come sign up with us, I promise you will not regret it. You get access to all of our fantasy sport content and some of the best NASCAR content that there is out there. You will get Xfinity Series slates covered in full, which is something I'm sure not a lot of sites do out there. And remember, guys, use promo code TACO. You get that lifetime 20% off discount. And it'll support this podcast. So let's get right into the slate here. It's an exhibition race. They're not running for any sort of playoff points or anything. They're using different cars than they'll be using at the Daytona 500. And this is really just a fun way to start off the season. And you've got 20 cars in the field here, and they've all made it through various means, most of them through being a pole sitter at any time last year, or making the playoffs, or being a Daytona 500 winner in the past. And I know that we have a new rules package for NASCAR coming into this season, but the Daytona 500 and this race here, of course, will be unaffected by the changes. It's the other Daytona race and the other, or the Talladega restrictor plate races that will be changed with the changes in the new system, with the new tapered spacer and aero ducts and all that. They think that there will be enough reduction of horsepower to the engine to be able to safely remove the restrictor plates. Although the tapered spacer is pretty much a restrictor plate in its own regard. It's just more of it's more conical than just the restrictor plate, which is a plate put in the engine that's just got like holes in it, just straight up holes in it to reduce the airflow to the engine. Obviously, if you use too much horsepower, the engine will explode. So this not really explode, but it'll overheat and stuff. And this. They've always done this at Daytona and in Talladega, but they're going to be adding this the smaller tapered spacer to most of the intermediate races. Well, all of them actually. It's the aero ducts that are going to be in most of the intermediate races. Any racetrack that's more than a mile long will be affected by this. Again, the 500 is going to be the same as always, same as before, and the short races will remain basically unchanged. So we don't have to worry about the rules package change this week. We are focused on, well, here in this video, we're just focused on this first exhibition race to start the season off. It's been about the same size over the last few years, but we've changed names again. This is the Gander RV Clash. It was the Advanced Auto Parts Clash for the last 2 years. And the format's changed a lot. Back when it was the Budweiser Shootout, they had different segments. It's been a 75 lap race for a few years now. Again, the format changes a lot, and some of the format currently is based on like a fan vote, but there used to be 2 mandatory pit stops. Now there's just 1 after 25 laps. You'll have a 25 and a 50 lap segment, and these guys basically just go all out in this event. There's no reason not to. Again, it's an exhibition race. There's really it's a completely different car from their 500 car. They don't really have much to lose. Some guys in particular, like Jamie McMurray, that I will get to, he has absolutely nothing to lose because he's not even going to be racing this season. And we'll get into all of that as we go through the drivers list. Just wanted to quickly give you guys a look at what is going on this year in the Domination Station, or the Research Station. The Domination Station will be the same optimizer as always, but on the Research Station we're going to have a few changes, and a lot of that's going to come from this new thing that I've got set up for this year. Really excited about. So this is the first practice that they had today. It was for the Daytona 500. Didn't quite get it set up in time to catch all of the Clash practices, but restrictor plate races, the practices don't really matter, as I'll explain in a little bit, but this is every single lap that was run in first practice. The second practice was rained out, for the most part, people got no more than 6 laps in. But as you can see here, I have every single lap broken down from fastest to slowest. And you'll notice that all these JGR guys kind of piled up here right in a row. And the reason for this, of course, because they were packed up right at the very end there. I mean, we saw Tyler Reddick and Ty Dillon and Hemrick. These guys were also packed up for a little bit, and they had the fastest laps for most of the run until towards the end there when the JGR guys all got together and started running laps together. But again, kind of the reason that the practices here, we're going to largely ignore them, especially for the Clash. They really don't matter at all because they can be easily some teams like Hendricks didn't run any pack racing, or they had no pack racing in practice, so they were just running out there solo as they like to do. So yeah, these are the just the averages overall, average time for each lap, not counting the laps that they're using to get up to speed and coming from pits. So you can see what their best lap was and their average lap for whatever. And in the future here, we'll be able to bring you, you may be used to the 10 lap averages that are commonly posted, but hopefully I'll be able to bring you guys like 3 lap averages, 12 lap averages, whatever lap averages, and also be able to just further break down the lap by lap data from just the races in general, get some really good idea of speed that can be broken down by just the basic loop stats that we have out there that we've been using for the most part, because there's not much out there in the world of NASCAR statistics. So I'm really excited to be able to bring you this lap by lap stuff. It'll really be helpful when it comes to practices, especially at short tracks where there are a lot of laps to go off of. You can, at a track like that, it would be much more insightful to look at like the top 50 laps and see who had the most of them, instead of just the current system. You either go off of a 10 lap run, or most of the time you're just looking at whoever had one hot lap, and that can oftentimes be thrown off by people that run in qualifying gear. And it'll be really easy to tell with this system when people throw on their qualifying gear compared to actual laps at a run, and we'll be able to separate through that sort of stuff. And another way you can kind of set it up here, if you just look driver by driver, sorted by lap and then driver, you can see Bowman, his first lap comes out here and he pitted it. The second lap isn't going to count because that has to count all the time they were in the pits, and it's they're getting up to speed laps. So this is only laps that are finished at full speed here, but you can see he started to gain a little bit of speed throughout his runs. Got in another run here, a little 2-lap run. So it's really fun to look at, just to see how guys progress throughout practice and who just had one hot lap and who had consistently fast times during practice. And you can see here, like with Eric Jones, I just noticed, like, obviously he was running by himself out here during these laps, putting laps up in the hundreds or so, and then JGR got together and he started putting up all these hot laps. So you'll be able to notice things like that, and it'll be really, really helpful for analyzing practices, that is for sure, among all the uses it can have for breaking down a regular race. So that's the most exciting thing that we have to look forward to for this next season. Now on to this slate here, the Clash. It's going to be really hard to tell things like ownership. We've got our ownership projections up here, and they're going to be a really good ballpark, but it's hard to tell who's really going to be playing this slate. I know that there are still some leftover NFL players that don't really know what to do. Right about now, All-Star break is when people kind of get tired of NBA DFS and they're looking to something. I know golf's getting a lot of action right now, and people are still playing hockey and basketball, but there's no baseball or anything yet, so guys are probably looking for a reason to play, especially the real degenerates. And seeing a NASCAR slate on there, it's always, NASCAR is something that's always more fun than people expect it to be. It's probably the sport that benefits the most from DFS action, because for a lot of people it would be completely insufferable to watch without the DFS action. But once DFS is in the mix, it becomes absolutely amazing. I've converted so many people into playing NASCAR that never thought they would in their lives play it, let alone even watch a race, and now they're diehards. So Definitely love our NASCAR. It's very lucrative, especially in Xfinity. Last season, we were just absolutely killing it early on, since we were one of the only sites with an optimizer, and just had a real edge from being on that every single week, right as soon as qualifying is over, pretty much. So here we get a lot of time to think about it. You know, they had qualifying out of a hat at 6:30 today, and got the race tomorrow at 2:30. Yeah, it's either 2:30 or 3. But nonetheless, got that race tomorrow, and it's on both DraftKings and, as you can see here, FanDuel. Let me just do this real quick so they're the same, just with the format. I kind of zoomed it out for the video. Let's see here. Boom. Well, it'll do. But anyway, we're going to start off with DraftKings. Have mostly a DraftKings focus on there because, I mean, the differences in the sites are pretty huge. Like the biggest FanDuel contest is 15K overall, is where the biggest DraftKings contest is 125K. There, I think it's the $6 over there that's that big, and they've got a few really big GPPs. And you know, FanDuel NASCAR is a pretty new product. Not a lot of people really like it with the way it's set up, as where DraftKings NASCAR has been going for years, and it's more of a quality product in most people's opinions. So you'll mainly focus on DraftKings, but we'll go over FanDuel play in just a bit. Now, first things first, got to teach you how this is scored. Not only just DraftKings fantasy in the first place for anyone who hasn't played before, but just the differences between something like this and like a normal race. So this has exactly half of the drivers that you'd find in a normal race. Only 20 is where you'd usually find 37 to 40 drivers. We'll see 40 drivers on the Daytona 500, so it's exactly half. So the first thing you got to think about that is, well, let's just break down the way that points are scored here. So you get a point for every single position you move forward. So if you start 5th and then you end up 4th, you get 1 point. And that's your place differential points. So here, if somebody starts 1st and they finish 20th, that'll be -19. That's the lowest possible place differential score, with 19 being the most you can possibly gain. And the formula for the points that you get for your finishes are, if you win, you get 46 points. If you don't win, then it's pretty much 40 or 42 minus whatever your position is. Like if you finish 2nd, that'd be 40, and so on. So it's 43 to the winner, then 40, 39, 38, so on and so forth. Since the lowest you can finish here is 20th, everyone on DraftKings will have a minimum of I think it's 20, 22 finishing place points. You can lose those by like starting 1st and finishing last and get down to 0, but we're probably not going to see anybody score 0. We'll go over some historical examples in a moment, but just letting you know that. Then you get, for DraftKings, you get 0.25 points for every lead lap, and then 0.5 points for fast laps. And those are twice as important as lead laps, but the catch with a restrictor plate race is those are distributed at random. Not only is the field going to get mixed up quite a bit, quite early and quite often, the fast laps usually go to the guys in the very back of the pack, so it's going to be really hard to predict. And you can see it's 4, but really I have everyone projected for exactly 3.75 fast laps, so that way everyone has, you know, all 75 laps just split up evenly amongst themselves, and you'll have less fast laps than lead laps, actually, because when they're in the pits, you know, you're not going to get any fast laps like during a caution, and in between stages and stuff like that, and also in the laps around with the pace car, you're not going to get fast laps for that. I'm sure the pace car wins all of those, so not going to really have to worry about dominator points nearly as much here at this race than at other races. It is really hard. The scores are going to be pretty close, more close than usual, so that's just one of the many reasons that salary this week is not going to matter at all. You are going to leave thousands on the table, and you won't worry about it. You shouldn't worry about it. The people that are playing this wrong are the people that are going to want to fill out their roster. And I mean, with some of the guys starting in the back here, Almirola, Boyer, Elliott Hamlin, you can make a pretty decent lineup playing guys that start in the back and getting your salary up there a ways. But guys that feel the urge to play Harvick, Keselowski, and Logano starting up there in the top 7, through historical examples, we know that is just not the way to go here. So let's move into the past here real quick and just look at the last 2 races with DraftKings salary that were available to analyze here, and we'll see how things ended up just based on where people started. So these are the DraftKings points scored. These are the FanDuel points scored for each of these guys. You've got Austin Dillon, who started on the pole. It was the third least expensive guy. Got 7 fast laps, of course, probably later in the race when he shuffled towards the back, and only 3 lead laps to get off to a start there. Paul Menard is in a very similar situation this week. He's starting up front, and he's also 5,800, so almost the same price as Dillon was last year. Of course, Dillon has a much better acumen at these restrictor plate races. He's very good at them. So that's kind of the difference there, is where Menard's not really known for that, but even still, he ended up finishing 5th and put up 39 DraftKings points. As you can see, that was just okay. He ended up finishing 7th of everybody, so not really that bad for starting first, but it is pretty bad if you consider that he finished 5th. Just as a rule of thumb, you're gonna kind of want to pick the guys who are just starting in the back here. They're gonna score more, or obviously not meant to sort by finish there. But the guys in the back there, these are going to be the guys that have all the upside. And Keselowski is the ultimate example of that. He started last. Keselowski and Logano, these two, they are teammates for Penske, and Penske is particularly good at restrictor plate races. Probably the only team that actually receives a little benefit. I'd give Hendricks a slight benefit in these races, but Penske is the one that gets a true benefit. These guys are actually really good. And as you can see, Keselowski is quite good at retaining the lead. He does that a lot here. Logano has as well, but Keselowski in particular has a knack for finding the lead and staying there. So as you can see, 73.25 points with 43 lead laps. That's going to be way above expectations for any driver in this race to have. So when looking at the fantasy point range you want to go for, obviously the guys that starting up near the front that finish towards the back, they're going to be in the 20s. Those are going to be the lineup killers. And even if you do well starting up front, you're going to barely be sniffing the 40s. And that's if you're really good. You finish runner-up like Logano here. But if you start in the back, you're just innately going to get more points. And you don't even have to lead any laps or anything. As you can see here, Kurt Busch, Ryan Blaney, all they did was finish top 5. And they far outperformed Joey Logano. So the guys starting up front are going to have to just do a lot more in order to have the same result as the guys in the back. And if you look at the highest scores overall, they started 17th, 14th, 15th, 13th. Then you've got Joey Logano, who started 3rd. Again, that's quite the exception to the rule. We did have some top 5 guys that finished in the top half of the field. But, we'll look to last year also to see if that was sort of the case. And, yeah, so you can see the guys that started towards the back, again, they scored more on both sides. So another tool that we have that we can use to break this down a little further is the historical summary. And I like to just look at this section here. Usually this section is a little bit more helpful when we have more races to go off of. This is just looking at 2 races. So this breaks everyone down based on their top starting positions. Usually it's by 5 starting positions, but this time I broke it down to 4. So guys starting on the first 2 rows, and the 3rd and 4th row, etc. And you can just see from the averages, each split is going to help you out a little more. You see the guys in the front 4 actually do a little bit better than the guys starting in the next group after that, but you can see most of the real value comes from the guys starting 13th or worse. And yeah, that's going to be the case oftentimes. They almost never score less than 40 points, as were the guys starting 1st to 4th. Only half of the time they're scoring 30 points. Only 25% of the time they're scoring 40 points. And they never hit 50 points, as where the guys in the back hit 50 points on a 40% rate. Now these guys up front can if they lead like every lap, like Keselowski did. But it's going to be really hard for them to, it's just not going to be hard for these guys too. So the rule of thumb is you basically just want to play the guys in the back the most, and other than that, you might just want to play ownership if you can even really figure out who's going to be highly owned. Not that complicated of a slate, but I think each year people start playing more and more of the guys in the back to the point where you almost have to start going a different direction. So getting into the slate here, just going to go top to bottom, and we might as well just start just based on the starting order here. So if you look at Menard, he's pretty much going to be a hardcore fade. He's done okay here in the past occasionally. Most recently when he raced the Sprint Unlimited, as it was called back in 2016, he did finish third. But you know, he's done pretty well in some of the duels at Daytona for qualifying position that we'll have on Thursday. But starting first, there's no way you can really play Paul Menard here. Kyle Busch, as you can see historically, his numbers aren't even that great at plate races. I'll just go over what these splits are real quick. Driver rating, just a good overall metric of how a driver performed at a race. Average running position kind of speaks for itself, but on average where they were in a race. Average finish, of course, very self-describing there. And lead laps, the average amount of lead laps they had, average amount of fast laps they had, and that's the number of races in the sample. So for recent restrictor plate races, we just go back a few years. As we're long-term, we go all the way back to 2013, which is when they started this generation of car. And then the DNF numbers, so you can see how many of the races they had DNFs at. And in these stats right here, if you had a DNF, that was removed from your split. So we're not just looking at raw numbers here, we're looking at DNF adjusted numbers. And this, of course, would be for their history at Daytona in particular. The restrictor plate stats would count both their stats from Talladega and Daytona, but of course they'll have to be adjusted going forward, and we'll have to split it by races that ran under the different packages, as you can't really compare the restrictor plate races to the ones in the future that won't have them. This is the track history for the Clash, and then this is the Daytona races here. And the laps finished numbers, these this is short for percentage of laps finished in a race. So what percentages of their scheduled laps they had finished. Like Keselowski has finished 99% of his restrictor plate scheduled laps. The only time he had a crash was there towards the end of the 2015 Daytona 500. As we can see, someone like Eric Jones, outside of his win in 2018, he's had a really hard time sticking around and finishing on these restrictor plate races. But you know, crashing at restrictor plate races, these numbers sort of go out the window. More important to look at non-restrictor plate races, because the crashes kind of happen at random, and sometimes crashes can take out like 50% or more of the field, and there's nothing you can do about it. So take these with a grain of salt this week. This is the percentage of times they finished on the lead lap. This is the percentage of the time they finished within 2 laps of the lead and within 10 laps of the lead. So these numbers are going to be pretty helpful, more or less helpful depending on what type of track you're at. These stats right here kind of speak for themselves. Percentage of the time they finish top 35, top whatever, number of wins they've had. So that kind of goes over the main part of the research station here, and that will change as we get more of the lap-by-lap data and have some new metrics to look at. But yeah, go back here to Paul Menard, pretty much going to be a fade. Kyle Busch, like I was trying to say, his recent and long-term restrictor plate stats just not great. He's had some off decent finishes and stuff, but he's not been one to lead a ton of laps, at least for, you know, compared to the other studs here. You can see it reflected in his price at 7,800. Price ain't gonna matter this week, but still you can tell he's usually priced above Keselowski or above Logano pretty much every single week. So DraftKings become really akin to who's good and who's not good at these restrictor plate races, and the pricing kind of reflects that. So Kyle Busch, he's starting second, also going to be quite the fade candidate. Keselowski's starting third. You're going to have to consider playing him in some lineups. He would not be a complete fade. I mean, obviously you saw from last season how he was able to just dominate tons of laps, and he's one of the few guys that can find the lead here and just stay on the lead, or stay with the lead. He's gonna retain some ownership, as you see here, about a 34% projection. People know to play Keselowski and Logano here. Might be lower if there are more sharps in the field than expected, because they're gonna know not to play guys starting up near the front. But still, his history of being able to put up lead laps here will definitely lead people to roster him, and it's quite obvious in like their driver rating, average running position. Pretty much all these stats point to Logano and Keselowski sticking out in particular as good plays. Newman and Bowman are going to be probably some of the lowest owned guys on the entire slate. Starting 4th and 5th, Newman really over qualified, and he's never been good at restrictor plate races like at all, so he's just not a very good play to make. And then Bowman, he has been pretty good at restrictor plate races. Filled in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. here in 2017. Ended up finishing 3rd. And you can see he actually, let's go by finish here. Finished 3rd. Had some fast laps. Of course, those are random, but didn't find the lead or anything. But he was able to start 8th and finish 3rd, and was pretty consistent where he was, even coming in at 100-1 odds, which were the second worst in the field. So not bad for Mr. Bowman, and he has shown some chops. His long-term stats are going to be thrown off, because back in this period right here, he was a scrub driving around in scrub cars. But this is what we're looking at right here in particular, recent stuff. He's been very good in Hendrick's equipment, and he replaced Dale Jr. in his car, the 88. So we've got some numbers. The recent turn numbers going to be of him in the 88, which is all we're looking at here. So Bowman's really good at the restrictor plate races, just starting 5th. You're not going to really want to roster him. And then you've got Kevin Harvick, who dominated last year, and Joey Logano, our defending champion last year. Harvick should have really been the champion. I mean, he dominated so much more than Logano here, but you can see even in the odds, Keselowski and Logano are the favorites, even over Harvick, who's usually the odds-on favorite pretty much every single week, and he's still the highest salaried guy on DraftKings. So he commands a lot of respect there. His stats are pretty good at restrictor plate races, just not quite in the league of Logano and Keselowski. He is driving a Ford, though, and Fords have historically dominated this race, with kind of being followed by Chevy, the Hendricks cars in particular, and then Toyotas are the ones that haven't really done too much at the restrictor plate races. It's always been dominated by Ford. We saw in Talladega, Ford, especially Stewart Haas Racing, ran 1, 2, 3, 4 for most of the race, and they were followed right by Penske. So it's pretty obvious that Ford does better with this package here. So Harvick and Logano going to get a fair amount of ownership, probably more than they need to. These are going to be some of the top fade candidates. Even Keselowski. I don't see if you play Keselowski, I understand why, but it's probably still just a bad decision overall. Logano would probably be the better play to make, honestly. I mean, he's finished top 2 the last 3 years, and has a good knack for keeping his car upright. You can see when he doesn't crash, he really does perform well and finds a way up to the front. So he'd be the play I'd make over Keselowski, but I'm still going to try to limit these guys. Then you've got Ryan Blaney, who I'm actually pretty big on. I think he's really good. He's driving the Ford as well. He's in the Penske crew now, driving the 12. He was driving Menard's 21 for the Wood Brothers Racing, who are an affiliate with Penske. But now he is a full-on Penske member, and I think he's going to go places this season. And he's actually been doing pretty well at the restrictor plate races, as long as he's not crashing, which happens. And even on Talladega, he's been quite impressive as well. So I really do like Ryan Blaney, and he's probably going to be one of the lower-owned guys I try to target and maybe go a little bit overweight on, even though he's starting 8th. Dillon, another guy, he's just so good at restrictor plate races, and Daytona in particular. This race right here is the only time recently that he's done poorly. You know why? Because he was in the catch fence. Like, he almost went in the stands. Like, you can pretty much toss that race out the window. And he was competing in that race, too. He was up near the front, which he pretty much always does at Daytona. So he's got quite a knack. And, given the fact that he is the grandson of Hendricks, who is always, historically dominated here with guys like Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Jimmy Johnson used to be quite killer here, as history would point out, but we'll get to him. Austin Dillon's going to be another guy I'm going to target. Hopefully he goes underlooked here. I think people might look at his history at Daytona and know that he's good to go, but I like that his price is so low. I don't think people are going to want to leave a ton of salary on the table. It just doesn't feel right to them. So there's, if you can go from Dillon to up to like a Martin Truex Jr., I think most people are going to make that play. So hopefully I'll find him at lower ownership than he should here, and I think he can do pretty well, and he honestly can hang. He's really good at finishing in the top 15 pretty much anywhere he goes, but here in particular I think he can compete. You've got Daniel Suarez, who is taking over Kurt Busch's 41 from last year. And so how this works out pretty much is Daniel Suarez is replacing Kurt Busch, who has made the switch over to Chip Ganassi Racing and will be driving the number 1 car that last year was ran by Jamie McMurray, leaving McMurray out of a ride. And we're about to talk about him here, so I might as well say he is quite slow compared to everyone else, about a half second off of the pace. He's driving the number 40 for Chip Ganassi Racing, which I can only assume is a kind of throwaway car. This will be his last race pretty much ever. He's going to be retiring after a pretty long-lived career. So you've got kind of a driver switcheroo there. Suarez was driving the number 19 that Martin Truex Jr. is currently driving, because his team, even after winning a championship, his team dismantled. And since he was always heavily associated with JGR, he got a spot there for Toyota. So Suarez is now driving Kurt Busch's Ford for Stewart-Haas Racing. You could argue that's even an improvement after last year and how good Stewart-Haas was, but it's definitely going to be different for him. I'm going to kind of avoid him just being in the new situation and all, but he could be somebody that has a surprise finish out of nowhere. That wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. He's just never really had the best luck at Daytona. So if you want to make a play on him, sort of like I'm doing with Blaney for ownership, that's going to be a good move. He's projected to come in with quite low ownership. The next play, though, Jamie McMurray, I'm definitely fading just because it seems like he's going to be slower for sure, but a lot of restrictor plate racing is about trust, and Jamie McMurray is kind of an asshole, and I don't think anyone's going to trust like drafting with him much. I think he's going to be singled out quite a bit here because he has wrecked the field before. He's known to be a very aggressive driver, and with this exhibition style, he's going to go all out. Can't see people really being quite trustworthy as someone that literally has nothing to lose here. So I'm going to be completely off of McMurray. And starting at 11th, I was really hoping he didn't qualify low to where you'd have to play him. Starting 11th, I'll have like minimal exposure to him, but I'm going to stay away for the most part. If you want to make that play, I guess, he will be low owned. Just it's not. I don't think it's the best move to make this week. Martin Truex Jr., he's starting 12th. I think he's gonna be the tipping point where a lot of people start piling on ownership. I know he's in a new car, new setup, but I mean the price will probably lead a lot of people to him. Just that's way too cheap for Truex. People are used to seeing him up there with the likes of Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Keselowski, Logano, those kind of guys. So the price tag, just like Larson, he's in the same boat as Larson, where he's notably worse at restrictor plate races, and you can tell by the odds. Usually is around like 8-1, 9-1 for a race, and even in a reduced field, these guys are a lot lower because it's kind of known that they're just not the best at restrictor plate races. Even though he almost won here back in the 2016 Daytona 500, that was one of the closest. I think it was the closest ever finish at Daytona, and he lost by a nose to Mr. Hamlin there. But outside of that, he's never really popped restrictor plate races, and he's starting 12th. It's all right. It's not going to be a bad play to make at all. I just think he's going to be very popular, and I definitely prefer going further down the list here. So you've got Jimmy Johnson, who was second fastest in practice for what that's worth. In long term, he is quite dominant here. This is the thing with Mr. Jimmy Johnson here. It's that if this were to go back further, which it did not, because the format was just quite a bit different going back past 2015. to a point where it's not really that comparable. But he just has a curse where he gets wrecked every single time he plays this race or the duels or something. He's just every single time he's crashing out. So I guess on FanDuel he wouldn't be the best play because FanDuel is all about survival and stuff. But I think people will know that, and he'll come in just a little bit under-owned compared to Truex. So I really do like making the Jimmy Johnson play, but you got to be able to cross your fingers and just go, eeh. But he also might gain, ownership just seeing the 7-time champion at $6,300, especially with a lot of the, maybe potentially more of the public in this tournament, with people being very fresh to her, just looking for something new. They might go, oh my gosh, Jimmy Johnson, really? That guy's won so many championships. But the DFS normals, the regulars, are really off of Jimmy Johnson, I'm sure, because they all know about his horrid luck here. And I'm willing to ride that. I do that pretty much every year, and I still get kind of burned by it, but I'm just going to keep doing that and keep playing Jimmy Johnson because eventually it's going to pan out for him. Kyle Larson at $6,000. He was the slowest besides Jamie McMurray, his former teammate. And, if you look to Kurt Busch's speeds here, he's the second slowest. I'm worried about Chip Ganassi racing there, and I'm not really going to be too huge on them guys, at least for what they should be. He is starting in a pretty low spot, which is nice, and he's actually done all right at these clashes. Just, I think that he's definitely more likely to get into an accident than most people, I would say. I mean, the lap finish stats are kind of there. It's just he's very aggressive, which is good, for a lot of things. It's good for his upside and stuff, but, the speed, I'm just worried about it. Chip Ganassi seems to be in a very interesting spot, but it's just not one of the guys in the back. It's just not one of the guys I really want to target too much. Clint Boyer here, $8,700. I mean, why bother mentioning the salary? Because it doesn't really matter. But still, he's starting back in 15th, and that's what does matter. And he's a really safe play overall. Just tends to keep his car together. Not the most aggressive of drivers, but he's quite the partier, I'll say that. Some of his stats, again, are going to be a little bit skewed, although it's recently that he's been doing kind of poorly at Daytona. It's 2015 and past, he was with Michael Waltrip Racing, and even this era here, for 1 year, he was with like BK Racing or something, and it was not great for Mr. Boyer, but now he's on Stuart Haas Racing, which is the elite team in NASCAR at the moment. Even still, the restrictor plate stats, it's just not his best type of track. You want to play Boyer at like a short track, definitely. But I really don't mind. I see Boyer, I could see him finishing in the top 10, no problem, just based on how things shake out. And he kind of had a nose for putting himself up there last season. Doesn't project out that well compared to a bunch of other guys in this range here, but I still like Boyer for what he is, and with his price being up there, maybe people might avoid him a little more. But really, once you get to the bottom, I mean, everyone's just going to know to play the guys in the bottom, and there's not much you can do about that. Chase Elliott, he won a duel last year, or the year before. It was his first win, quote-unquote win, on the NASCAR circuit, and since then he's gotten some real wins. And his Daytona 500, or just Daytona history in general, is very bad, as you can see. He got the pole here in 2016 to start off his career, and the first thing he did was crash. So he's not had good luck. He's done okay at the clashes, I guess, but the luck has not been there. This is my guy. I'm very biased. I was a huge Bill Elliott fan growing up, so I'm going to be all over Chase, obviously. Starting so far back, yeah, give me some Chase. I'm not going to worry about it, and that's pretty much going to be the play there. I think that him and Hendricks are the team that I'm on the most, besides Penske and Stuart Haas, which kind of goes without saying. Although there is merit to stacking teams this week for sure, especially the Toyotas, because they have really stuck together. You notice that with the practices. They do strategy all as a team, and you're going to definitely want to do team stacks because of that. And I do not mind the Hendricks stack one bit. So I like Elliott, and I really like Hamlin here. Hamlin is one of the safer drivers. You're always going to see him do well in these laps finish stats. And he's kind of been low-key pretty good at Daytona. Had the victory that was, quite noticeable with him, and he's even won here in 2016. I just really hope that he's not going to be as highly owned as I think he is. I know he's going to be really highly owned. I know, and his price is pretty right at 8,300, which might lead people to him. I'm still going to get all the Hamlin I can, because that is just, I mean, this is the area that you want to attack right here. Just, yeah. Then Eric Almirola, who I love. A lot of people remember he was about to win the Daytona 500 last year. Ended up getting wrecked on like the last lap. Close to the last lap, and finished 37th. Or 27th, my bad. Yeah, Almirola really has a knack for restrictor plate races. I'd say more so at Talladega, which he won most recently in the fall race there. So Almirola, even though he's 8,900, don't give a crap. Going to play all the Almirola I can possibly handle. Then Kurt Busch in the new car, $7,300. Starting second to last, that's definitely going to be a play for me. It's in his history. He's very good here. You can put whatever car in the winner's circle here. It does not matter. So I'm feeling some Kurt Busch. Even though the expectations, obviously, with him being, perhaps slower, maybe on the slower end, still not sure about it. I'm pretty sure with Jamie McMurray, but I'm still not quite sure about Larson and Busch here. But I have confidence enough to where I think Kurt Busch could at least get it done, get in the top 7 or so, and that's all you're going to need from someone starting 19th. And then the play here, although the most dangerous, as I must point out, Eric Jones starting last. He's going to be the obvious chalk. He won here most recently in 2018. I think that's what's going to lead people to him. Outside of the fact he started last, it's just your boy Jones likes to crash, and he sure likes to crash a lot. That is something he's very good at. He does it anywhere that he races. He just has higher DNF numbers than people, and you're going to have to understand that going in. And you can make a fade on him, but making a complete fade even, that's probably going to do more harm than good. Starting last, he has nowhere to go but up, so unless you're on FanDuel where you really get punished for crashing, he's probably not going to get punished all that much, and he'll just, he'll have a good finish kind of by default. That's what you're going to notice about the guy starting in the back here. You really can't go wrong with him. I still wouldn't go 100% on Jones. I'm definitely saying limit him to like 70% or something, but you really can't go too wrong playing Jones this week. So going to go over FanDuel just real quick. I have this formatted all wrong. Oh, yeah, this is going to be a deal. I know exactly what I did wrong, too. Here, I got to do this number real quick because it has one more spot than, or I didn't do ownership projections over there. That is the issue here. So, just going to paste that as format for right now. And do the same with this. I don't know. It's on the video. Can't quite pause it right now, so you gotta just do this on the fly. Sure, buddy. We're doing this. All right, so it should help make things look a little better here. So you'll notice the pricing differences. Screw with these. The pricing difference is quite different on the sites. You notice Logano and Keselowski kind of in the rightful spot over Harvick, but Hamlin's going to be the big difference. Way more expensive over there on FanDuel. Still going to play him a lot, but you can see that historically just it's not really going to matter with the starting in the back isn't going to matter quite as much because you get half of the points for place differentials you do over on DraftKings. It's going to be all about where they end up finishing, and that can be kind of hard to predict here. So you're gonna want to you're just gonna want to mix it up as much as possible. Really, we'll have some ownership projections put up there on FanDuel. Just it's look at guys like Suarez, gonna be a lot cheaper. Jones especially way cheap over there, and not quite sure. I haven't done too much studying on FanDuel this week. I just kind of put this up before I started the video, but I think that you're gonna still leave a ton of salary on the table there, but you're gonna want to take more of the better drivers than you would on DraftKings, where you want to kind of completely play the ownership. You're gonna want to take guys like Jimmy Johnson over guys like Menard, just out of principle there. And Jones is gonna be more of a fade on FanDuel than DraftKings, where he's pretty much a free play. Because if he crashes, it doesn't matter. He's gonna do just piss poor, even if he led laps or something. It's just FanDuel is all about just staying in and getting those laps completed, and then having a good finishing position. Because the place differential just doesn't matter quite as much over there, and there aren't as many dominator stats to go off of either, which doesn't matter on either site much this week, but especially over on FanDuel. You're not getting the fast laps or anything, just about the laps completed, and that you're going to get a lot more of those than you will lead laps. So it's going to be a mixture of finish and then just not crashing, and then after that you might factor in place differential, but it does not make Jones like a free play over there. So yeah, those are just the little differences between the two sites. Usually I use the two sites to kind of hedge against each other. And, at a more usual race, that'd be the way to go. Of course, restrictor plate race, and especially with it being the exhibition race with half the size field, things are going to be a lot more hard to predict, a lot more variance, especially since, the all-out nature of it and them not really having to race safely whatsoever. I mean, the last time we picked up DFS NASCAR was in the playoffs, where everybody was racing very, very carefully. This is quite the opposite of that, and with the fast laps being distributed kind of randomly as well, just also going to just be another thing that can make the scores a little bit random. So on DraftKings, you're gonna kind of want to just play the ownership and sort of plant your own flags. We also just want to play it safe and go with the guys in the back. That's what you should default to. Just don't get caught up in the Keselowskis, especially like the Kyle Bushes of the world up here. And definitely don't worry about filling out your salary. I mean, next week we'll be leaving 20, 30K on the table and not giving a darn crap. So this is going to kind of get you prepped for that. And the two duels also on Thursday will. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to go over. Good luck this season with NASCAR. Hopefully we can somehow beat last season. Not sure that's going to happen. We had just such a good 2018 season, just super dominant over there. But we're going to keep it going for 2019. And, yeah, that's all for me. See you guys.